On the 22nd of October, the very first self-organized bilateral meeting of Azerbaijani and Armenian experts and civil society representatives took place in Yerevan, a process supported by the governments of both nations and widely viewed as part of the post-8th of August Washington track. And now, months after that very first encounter, a reciprocal arrangement is unfolding here in Baku. Those Armenian representatives of civil society and experts who welcomed their Azerbaijani counterparts in Yerevan are now here in Baku. And I'm absolutely delighted to have this distinct privilege and opportunity to converse with two of them, with Areg Khochinyan, President of the Research Center on Security Policy based in Yerevan, and Narek Mինասյանի, political analyst based in Yerevan as well. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Arek, my first question is going to be addressed to you. So, your first time in Baku, your Azerbaijani counterparts, Farhad Mamadov and Rusif Hussein, told me that they felt incredibly secure in Yerevan. What is your feeling here in Baku?
Definitely the same. I must say that the visit is organized on a very high level. We do see, first of all, we have seen a lot since yesterday. We have seen a lot from the city. I must say that the city is quite different from what I was imagining it, because, you know, mainly in Yerevan we can see a couple of buildings in the news, etc. But it's a very multi-layer city, I would say. The city changes its face based on what district you are. Some districts are very much like American districts, like European districts, like Eastern districts, like Soviet districts. There are many layers of the city. That's very impressive. Definitely, I feel no threat, no danger. It's very secure. Everything is good and very well organized.
Thank you, Arek. Narek, in terms of your feeling here in Baku, I mean, I think that Rusif told me that had you, like you Azerbaijani Armenian experts in Yerevan, walked down a street without any particular protection, they would have been perfectly safe. Do you feel the same here in Baku?
Yes, the trip overall in the city center was organized very well. At the same time, the security was provided on a high level. It was, I felt secure here, and it was really interesting. Again, like Areg, I also noticed that the city is very diverse. I mean, in terms of architecture, it was really interesting that parallel to some historic monuments, there are some new buildings also with new architecture.
Thank you, Narek. Arek, let me just be very clear about the subject. You're here in Baku, we're having this nice conversation. A few months ago, when I was trying to organize Caucasus Now with my colleague Niga, and we were just trying to bring together Armenian and Azerbaijani experts, that was a massive challenge. Just a few months ago, before 8th of August. And now we're here in Baku having this conversation. You're going to have your meeting with Azerbaijani counterparts later. What has changed so massively? Is it all about 8th of August moment?
Well, before to the Washington declaration, there was Abu Dhabi meeting. And to me, with their meaning and with their influence, they are on the equal level, the Abu Dhabi meeting and the Washington meeting. Because if there was no Abu Dhabi meeting, there would have been no Washington declaration. Definitely, there is a very strong acceleration of the negotiation process, the tempo of the normalization during the last couple of months. And the credit doesn't go to Americans, the credit goes to us. The credit goes to the Armenian side and the Azerbaijani side. The unprecedented meeting in Abu Dhabi, where the leaders and their teams met without any mediation, without any third party. I think in Abu Dhabi they agreed on majority of the negotiated items or the negotiated issues, with one missing part being the communication. And then the communication issue was to a level also solved in the Washington declaration and the Washington meeting. We're still waiting for the Armenian-American negotiations to end on the details of the Trump's route on the trip. With the upcoming and then with next involvement of the Azerbaijanis in the process, but that's more of, in my opinion, that's more of a technical process. The main political agreement was held in Washington. So by the end of the day, right now, I can't even think about a major disagreement on political level between the sides. Because we agreed almost on everything. We agreed on the methodology of the delimitation, we agreed on the peace agreement, the text is published, we agreed on the communications, the text of the trip, the political agreement is published. My foreseeing is that if the main changeable elements still being the elections in Armenia, this is the major sort of point of a crossroad that we are still up to. After the elections, I foresee that in the term of 1 year, we will also have the peace agreement signed and then ratified by the parliaments. Whenever the Armenian-American negotiations will end on the communications, and then Azerbaijan will be involved, we will have the construction of the trip, etc., and the communication will start to open. And then we will have also the continuation of the delimitation demarcation, which, by the way, may take years because Armenian-Azerbaijani border is the longest border in the region.
Yeah, 1,000-kilometer border.
Yes,
but, yeah.
yes.
So we got elections in Armenia in July.
Yes.
Before that, there will be EPC.
No, June.
Sorry, first month of summer. We got EPC, which is not part of the peace process, but it's very interesting whether there will be Azerbaijan represented or not. There's no clear answer to this question, no official confirmation so far. Then we got probably this constitutional matter must be sorted out. Peace agreement, basically. And you said the process is bilateral. So Azerbaijan and Armenia agreed bilaterally. It just so happened that in Washington, under the circumstances, they signed that joint declaration initialing the peace agreement, agreeing on Trump route for international peace and prosperity, which wasn't the case in Abu Dhabi, but probably was in the offing. Nárek, what is your feeling about the overall Washington process? I will come to the point about the nature of your interaction with your Azerbaijani colleagues a bit later, but about the wider peace process. Do you feel it is still, despite strong American involvement, remains a bilateral process between two governments and two countries?
In my estimation, Washington summit was a breakthrough moment for this process because, again, after Abu Dhabi meeting, there were some, let's say, we had some positive movement forward, but anyway, something was missing. And probably President Trump was the factor that managed to join the position of two sides and finally to provide a paper that would be acceptable for both sides, to provide some principles that are acceptable for both sides. It's very important. At the same time, we can see that after that, there is a change of rhetoric in both sides. Already from Yerevan and Baku, we can hear some statements that the peace is already established. And now we are working on the institutionalization of the peace. It's a very strong message, and it is in the line of the spirit of August 8th summit. It's very important. At the same time, we can see that there are other positive decisions also. For example, about lifting the restrictions on the transit for Armenian goods through the territory of Armenia. Parallelly, Armenian side also announced that Armenia is ready to organize the transit of the trucks from Azerbaijan to Turkey and from Turkey to Azerbaijan through its territory. It's again a very strong message, and it would be great to have an answer from Baku also to this suggestion. At the same time, we have an understanding that parallel with the development of the Trump road, we would have delimitation and demarcation of different sections on the border, starting mainly from the southern part, because it's part of that the blocking of the communication. We and Americans are working intensively in this direction. Of course, there were some problems with the shutdown, with the fact that Witkov's office is very engaged in different conflict zones also. But in the recent weeks, we have seen that Americans are also getting more engaged in this process, and we have also some, let's say, some timeline already in our mind that till the end of this year, we will have the final vision of Armenian side regarding trip. During the first half of the next year, we would finalize and agree everything with American side, and probably we would sign also some documents because there should be a legal basis for the Trump's development, trips development. And on the second half of the year, we would start already the construction, the physical activity on the ground. And again, the process is overall very complex because it is not only about the railway, it is about the electricity grids, it is about the pipelines, it is about the optic cables.
Yeah.
So it's very complex project, and it would be very beneficial not only for two countries but overall for the region.
Thank you, Nárek. And it looks like that by virtue of Azerbaijan actually lifting that that restriction on any goods reaching Armenia, which was actually announced when President Aliyev was in Astana, I believe,
Yes.
was delivering during that press briefing together with his Kazakh counterpart. This probably shows that the 8th of August breakthrough or Abu Dhabi, Washington breakthrough cumulatively is already producing results. The peace is actually producing dividends and so forth. Arek, I would like to understand the structure of this engagement of yours with Farhad and Rusif and many other Azerbaijani colleagues of yours. I describe it as the one in Yerevan on the 22nd of October. I'm not entirely sure whether your dates are accidental or not. You decided to make it 22nd of November. Perhaps it's 22nd, something mystical about this number will be contemplated about later. So I describe it as a first ever inaugural, the one in Yerevan, self-organized and government-backed bilateral meeting of Azerbaijani experts and civil society representatives. My understanding of your engagement is that you all support the current peace process, so you've got a particular view which is in line with the logic of the peace process, and you're not merely conveying your respective government's official lines, but also you're trying to influence that very process as influential people yourselves, and also preparing your societies to create peace. Is my understanding correct according to your understanding?
First of all, let me give a couple of comments about how it came to reality. So, you know, Orhan, that we, together with our Azerbaijani colleagues, were meeting for years by now in different capitals under the organization and facilitation of different international organizations, etc. And the contacts we had are going back in years. So at a certain point, we came to the conclusion that we are ready to do this on bilateral level. We know each other, we trust each other enough to do this on bilateral level. Thus, we in Yerevan and our colleagues here in Baku approached our own governments, described them that there is this kind of an idea. And then we got the backing up of the governments, because all of this wouldn't be possible, of course, without the green light and the active support of the governments. And then that flights and meetings have become a reality. By the way, I was meeting the Azerbaijani delegation in Yerevan as Farhad was meeting Armenian delegation in Baku at the airport, at the runway, let's say. And I was described by the technical team of the airport that was the first ever Azerbaijani plane with a charter flight from Baku to Yerevan. So that's a historical moment, basically.
What about one which was in 2011? I think there was one flight back in that.
It was not an Azerbaijani flight. For this trip, they used some different third country plane, let's say. Yeah? While this plane was written with very big letters Azerbaijan on it, and you should have seen the faces of the people in the airport who all of a sudden saw an Azerbaijani plane in the Armenian airport, and I think the same was here in Baku when our plane came. But nonetheless, I would say that, as I described in the very beginning, that there is a very strong acceleration of the process of the peace right now, and mainly this acceleration is happening on the official line, as a matter of the negotiations between the leadership of the countries. So very often the public opinion doesn't reach after these negotiations, because they reached, let's say, 10x, while the public opinion is still at the 2x level. So I see the main role of our initiative as, you know, bringing the public opinion, bringing the larger masses to reach to the level where the governments have reached on their official level of negotiations. And basically this is the level of the track 2 and track probably 1.5 diplomacy, you know, to have a bigger engagement, to have bigger and deeper engagement from the civil societies, from the societies of the countries. And yes, also what you described about, you know, trying to bring also something additional to the official line. You know, it's very often new ideas are very hard to get to the official line of the negotiations because they are much more skeptical, they are much more cautious on the official negotiations. While here on the track 2, this is a perfect ground for trying out new ideas. And sometimes when those ideas are, for example, on the track 2 or track 1.5, they met on both sides with high optimism and, you know, high heart, we message those ideas to the track 1, and if they're accepted, that's very good.
Nárek, how do you see your own influence on the official process? Because effectively, as I mentioned when I was posing my question to Arek, had you been against the peace process, you would not have been here. There's a particular logic to this process. Only people who support the current peace process are here. But also, I imagine you gauge, you calculate your own influence on the peace process. What is your feeling about that?
So me personally, I have participated again in different peace-building projects before, mediated and organized by different donors, by different organizations. And now, I guess, the difference of this initiative from the others is the new political environment in which we are working now. Because after August 8th summit, we can see that there is a change of some rhetoric, there is a more political will in this direction, which is creating better conditions for the success of this format. And indeed, people who are engaged in track to diplomacy were more flexible than politicians. In some cases, we can be more creative than politicians who are too concentrated on their political positions. And hopefully, we can also come up with some ideas that can be useful for them as well. So the civil society, indeed, is bridging the society and the decision makers. In this case, also, we are trying to share our concerns with Azerbaijani colleagues on the issues that are really sensitive for us. And again, we are discussing, we don't have any limitations on the topic, first of all. We are having open discussions. We are discussing the issue of Armenian captives, the issue of missing persons, and many logistics, some ideas for new projects. And I should also mention that we already have some ideas that can, in future, become some projects. And for the next stages of this initiative, we are planning to broaden, to expand this format, to include more representatives from civil society and expert community. And probably we should have also organized some projects which would have more visibility for the societies, because one of our key aims is to normalize this kind of context, this kind of mutual visits, because the visit of Armenian expert to Baku, it shouldn't be historic, it should be normal. Like vice versa.
Yeah, in the fullest of time it will be normal, but the first ever inaugural self-organized bilateral meeting in Yerevan was indeed very historic, and the designation should be made very clear. Arek, I know that Chatham House rules dominate and guide your meetings. I have absolutely no illusion that you will reveal anything, but still, amongst the issues that you have discussed with your Azerbaijani counterparts, which one, in general terms, if you could describe it, has so far proven to be most challenging?
You know, Orhan, as Narek said, we have this atmosphere of trust and cooperation where we don't really have challenges in raising issues, because we are working together, we are comfortable working with each other, and we can raise both our side and Azerbaijani side, both in Yerevan and in Baku. We are free to raise every single topic we find important. But if I go to the more of the understanding of the political realities, I would say the humanitarian issues are the most challenging one right now. I would even use the word toxic, because these issues are poisoning the peace process. Be it in Armenia or in Azerbaijan, I believe. Whenever one of the sides is talking about the bright future, about the peace process, about the success of the peace process, etc., the counter-argument would usually be of the humanitarian nature. As I see it here in Baku, it is mainly about the fate of the missing people, fate of the consequences of the war, both economic and social, on this country, right? On the Armenian side, it's mainly the captives who are still held in Baku. This is also the missing people, and of course there is a gigantic trauma for both societies. So first of all, I would mention the humanitarian issues. My personal understanding of this issue is that both sides should show 100% readiness to cooperate and to, try to overpass this, because one way or another it should be overpassed, let's say. That's first. And second, I mainly see this criticism amongst the people on whose approach to the peace process I have high doubts. These are mainly, pro-Russian or Russian-speaking or based in Russia media sort of initiatives, analytical initiatives, etc., who are trying to dig out, both here in Azerbaijan, in Armenia, to dig out what did one expert say during like the war 5 years ago or 2023 clashes, etc., etc. And this is happening in both capitals. I mean, in Armenia, journalists and some analysts are finding out what did the Azerbaijani delegation members do or speak years ago. And here in Baku, I can see some of them doing the same about the Armenian delegation. Naturally, we didn't came from heaven, or we didn't came out of nowhere during the last 6 months. We were living back then. We were acting back then.
But there was a war in 2020.
There was a war,
very clearly.
and very clearly, everyone was
huge
doing.
Amount of blood was shed.
Exactly, and every side was doing what was in the best interest of its homeland, of its nature, of its country. So, my main comment to these narratives and to these speeches would be: this is a road to nowhere. I mean, if we're going to start digging who was right, who was doing what, who was saying what, it is a road to nowhere. The August 8 declaration gave us a chance to draw a red line and to start building based on those agreements. And it is just to us whether we are smart and wise enough to do that, or we are just bunch of aborigines who are going to be ruled from the former oppressor and colonizer once again by making them fight each other.
Thank you, Areg. And Narek, in the context of those forces within both countries who may potentially be against the current peace process, what is your evaluation of their cumulative strength?
In my estimation, just overall, in Armenian society, for example, we have seen a big interest in the expert community and in civil society to be engaged, but the problem was the skepticism towards this process. So people don't know how sustainable this format would be, and they don't know how effective this process would be. The only way to prove that this process and this format can be successful to provide some tangible results through this format, through these discussions. So I guess that would be the best counter-argument to the critics and to skeptics of this format. So so we should work in this direction, and as I mentioned, we have already some ideas that would become projects in near future, and probably in Baku we would continue the discussions on the timeline already of those projects, and going back to Yerevan we would start also working already on the implementation of that project, and we should also stress the more engagement of civil society in this project. This is the best scenario to move forward. And of course, there would be critics, there would be skeptics forever. It's obvious. But again, we should also try to engage them in the process, because they should have the information from the first hand to understand what is going on the ground, what we are doing here, and probably that is the right way.
Thank you, Narek. Arek, I imagine that the intention here is to, on both sides, Azerbaijani and Armenian side, expert community members, to be constructive, but there's absolutely no desire to engage in whitewashing, in doing something which would actually lose the actual meaning of the process, because I suppose the crux of the matter is that you have to appreciate the scale of the challenge, but be very optimistic about being able to overcome that very, very challenge. I'm very grateful to both of you for this distinct opportunity. As I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, a few months ago it was a massive challenge for me and my colleagues to organize one decent Caucasus Now program. But it looks like with this spirit we'll be able to conduct more on-the-ground actually Caucasus Now episodes, both in Baku and Yerevan. And there's absolutely no need to go anywhere else. I mean, one of the things I earlier, when I was talking to other members of this particular participant of this meeting, is there anything different about this meeting apart from the location, apart from its organizational aspects? When you speak to each other in Yerevan or in Baku, this subject, the substance, is it in any way different to your discussions that were conducted in Berlin, in London, anywhere else?
I would mention two more organizational level differences. First is that in Yerevan and in Baku we don't have any facilitators or mediators or organizers of third nationality, which in my opinion is an important thing, because very often, you know, when you are talking to a level, you're talking also for them. While they are present in the room. When there is only you and the Azerbaijani side, you're just talking for the Azerbaijani side, which is very important for the content, let's say. Of course, there is the security measures taken in both in Yerevan and Baku, which also feels different. But on the matter of the discussion, I would say it doesn't have really an influence.
Well, of course, I'm sure between you, Azerbaijani, Armenian experts, there remain certain terminological differences in reference to certain individuals who may face legal challenges and in relation to some other matters. But I'm also under the impression, on the basis of my conversation with you, that you're also trying to create a common sort of narrative in order to endorse and augment it. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to our next encounter, which I hope will happen very soon, sooner than I may potentially think. Thank you.
Thank you.